The Carthony Third Fleet was a sight that had made entire civilizations surrender without firing a single shot. 800 warships moved through space in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the dark metal that made Carthony vessels nearly indestructible. Each ship carried enough weapons to crack a planet in half. Together, they represented more firepower than most species would ever see in their entire history. Fleet Commander Torax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominance Eternal. He was old by Carthony standards, with scars across his gray skin that told stories of dozens of successful campaigns. He had broken rebellions, crushed resistance movements, and brought entire star systems under Council control. This mission to the human home system would be the easiest victory of his long career. "Report," he commanded, his voice sharp and cold. His tactical officer, a younger Carthony named Vrel, checked her displays. "We have entered the outer boundary of the Sol system, Commander. Long-range sensors detect the human fleet moving to intercept us." "How many ships?" Vrel paused, checking her readings twice to make sure they were accurate. 40 vessels, Commander. Their largest ship appears to be cruiser class by our standards. The others are smaller." Torax let out a sound that passed for laughter among his species. 40 ships against 800? Either these humans are brave beyond reason, or they are too stupid to understand basic mathematics. He turned to his communications officer. "Open a broadcast channel to the Council. Let them witness how the Carthony deal with those who defy us." Across the vast distance of space, the Council chamber on Volantis Prime received the transmission. Delegates from dozens of species gathered around viewing screens to watch the battle that was about to unfold. Most expected it to be over in minutes. Aboard the human vessel U-East Constellation, Captain Nathan Drake studied the approaching Carthony armada with calm brown eyes. He was a tall man in his early 50s, with the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of experience. His crew moved around him with practiced efficiency, preparing for what was about to happen. Commander Megan Torres stood at his side, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had served with Nathan for 15 years, and she knew better than anyone the weight of what they were about to do. "All ships report ready, Captain," Megan said quietly. "Erasure protocols are loaded and standing by." Nathan nodded slowly. "Open a channel to the Carthony flagship." The main view screen flickered, and Fleet Commander Torax's scarred face appeared. His 4 eyes moved independently, taking in the human bridge and its crew with obvious contempt. "Human Commander," Torax said, "I will give you credit for courage. It takes bravery to face the Carthony Third Fleet with so few ships. But courage without strength is just another word for foolishness. Surrender now, power down your weapons, and I promise your deaths will be quick and painless." Nathan's expression did not change. "Fleet Commander Torax, I am required by Earth law to offer you one final opportunity to withdraw your forces. Turn your ships around and return to Council space. If you continue on your current course, what follows cannot be undone." Torax's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Cannot be undone?" "Human, in 5 minutes your tiny fleet will be scattered atoms, and in 5 hours your homeworld will be burning. You threaten me with 40 ships? I am not threatening you with ships, Commander." Nathan's voice remained steady and calm. "I am simply telling you what will happen if you do not leave. This is your final warning." The Carthony commander made a dismissive gesture. "Enough talk. All ships begin attack formation. Destroy the human vessels, but leave their flagship intact. I want their captain brought to me alive, so he can watch his world burn before he dies." The massive Carthony fleet began to move, spreading out into an attack pattern that had crushed hundreds of enemy forces over the centuries. Weapon systems powered up across 800 ships, targeting the small cluster of human vessels that stood in their path. On the Constellation, Nathan turned to Megan. "Execute Protocol Omega." Megan took a deep breath. Her hand moved to a panel that only she and Nathan had authorization to access. Protocol Omega confirmed. Executing now. Across the 40 human ships, something happened that the Galactic Council would spend decades trying to understand. It was not an explosion. It was not a beam of energy or a missile launch. There was no flash of light, no wave of destruction, no dramatic display of power. One moment, the Carthony Third Fleet existed. 800 warships, 300,000 crew members. The largest military force the Council had deployed in centuries. The next moment, there was only empty space. No debris. No escape pods. No radiation signatures. No distress signals. The Carthony Third Fleet had simply ceased to exist. As completely and totally as if someone had erased a drawing from a piece of paper. In the Council chamber on Valandis Prime. The viewing screens showed nothing but stars where the Armada had been seconds before. The delegates stared in absolute silence, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. High Arbiter Zelvox rose from his seat, his 4 eyes wide with something his species had not felt in thousands of years. Pure, primal terror. What? What happened? Where is the fleet? No one could answer him. Aboard the Constellation, Nathan Drake spoke into the still-open communication channel. His voice was calm and clear, and it reached every receiver in Council space. Attention, Galactic Council. What you have just witnessed was not a battle. It was not a victory or a defeat. It was simply a removal. He paused, letting his words sink in. Humanity does not fight wars. We do not negotiate with those who threaten our existence. We do not accept surrender from those who would destroy us. We simply remove the threat. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes focused on the camera that was broadcasting his image across the galaxy. The Carthony Third Fleet no longer exists. Not destroyed. Not defeated. Erased. Every ship, every weapon, every single crew member has been removed from existence. There are no survivors, because there is nothing left to survive from. The Council chamber remained frozen in horrified silence. This capability has existed within humanity for over 200 years. Nathan continued. We have used it exactly 3 times in our history, always against threats that left us no other choice. Each time, the threat was not merely defeated but erased completely. Not just the armies or the weapons, but everything connected to the threat. He stood straight, his hands clasped behind his back. We did not want this. We asked only for peace and mutual respect. Your council chose to answer with threats and invasion. Now you have seen what humanity can do when pushed beyond our limits. Nathan's expression softened slightly, though his voice remained firm. We will not pursue further action at this time. We hope that this demonstration will convince the Council that peaceful coexistence is the only sensible path forward. But understand this clearly. If any force threatens Earth or our colonies again, we will respond in the same manner. There will be no warnings, no negotiations, no second chances. He reached toward the control panel to end the transmission, then paused. Humanity does not want to be your enemy. We want to be your neighbors, your partners, perhaps even your friends. But we will not be your slaves. The choice of what happens next belongs to you. The screen went dark in the council chamber. No one moved. No one spoke. The most powerful civilizations in the galaxy sat in stunned silence, realizing for the first time that everything they thought they knew about power and war had just been proven wrong. And somewhere in the vast emptiness of space where the Carthony Third Fleet had once been, there was nothing. Not even atoms. Not even memories. Just silence and stars and the cold understanding that the universe had changed forever. The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched across nearly a mile of polished stone and floating platforms. Light from 3 distant suns filtered through crystal windows that had stood for 10,000 years. Representatives from 37 different species filled the chamber, each one seated according to their rank and power within the council hierarchy. At the center of it all stood High Arbiter Zelvox of the Carthony Dominion. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 eyes that moved independently of each other. His species had ruled the council for 3 centuries, and in all that time, no one had dared to challenge their authority. The Carthony were conquerors. They had built their empire on the bones of weaker species, and they saw no reason why this pattern should ever change. Today's session concerned a small matter, at least in Zelvox's mind. A newly discovered species from a tiny yellow star had refused to accept the Council's terms of integration. This was unusual, but not unprecedented. New species often needed to be taught their place in the galactic order. The Carthony had plenty of experience with such lessons. "Bring forward the human representatives," Zelvox commanded, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. 2 figures walked calmly toward the central platform. The first was a man of average height with gray hair and steady blue eyes. His name was Daniel Cooper, and he served as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. Beside him walked a woman with short brown hair and a military bearing. Commander Lisa Warren had spent 20 years in Earth's defense forces before being assigned to this diplomatic mission. The other species in the chamber studied the humans with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. These creatures were so small, so fragile-looking. They had no claws, no natural armor, no venom glands. How had they even survived long enough to develop space travel? "Ambassador Cooper," Zelvox began, "your species has been offered a great honor. The Galactic Council has agreed to integrate humanity into our community of worlds. You will provide workers for our industries, soldiers for our armies, and resources for our continued expansion. In return, you will receive the protection of the Council and access to technologies far beyond your current understanding." Daniel Cooper listened patiently until Zelvox finished speaking. Then he took a slow breath and responded in a calm, measured voice. "High Arbiter, I thank you for this offer. However, I must respectfully decline on behalf of Earth and all human colonies." A ripple of surprise passed through the chamber. The Vrexian delegate, a massive insect-like creature with razor-sharp mandibles, leaned forward in his seat. The Selenari representative, whose body was made of living crystal, flickered with agitation. No one declined the Council's offers. It simply was not done. Zelvox's 4 eyes narrowed. "You decline? Perhaps you do not understand the situation, Ambassador. This is not a request. Species that refuse integration are classified as threats to galactic stability. Threats are dealt with accordingly." "We understand perfectly," Daniel replied. "And our answer remains the same. Humanity will not submit to subjugation. We seek peaceful coexistence with all species, but we will not become slaves or servants to anyone." The chamber erupted in mocking laughter. The Vrexian delegate clicked his mandibles in a sound that his species used to express both amusement and hunger. "Little human, do you have any idea what you are saying? Your species controls 12 colony worlds. We control thousands. Your fleet consists of a few hundred ships. The Council commands millions. What exactly do you believe you can do if we decide to take what we want?" Lisa Warren's hand moved slightly toward the communication device on her belt, but Daniel placed a gentle hand on her arm. His expression remained calm, almost serene. "Distinguished delegates," Daniel said, addressing the entire chamber, "humanity has no desire for conflict. We are a young species by your standards, and we have much to learn from the older civilizations of this galaxy. But we have also learned certain lessons that perhaps you have forgotten." He paused, allowing his words to settle over the assembly. War, as you understand it, is a contest of strength. The stronger force wins. The weaker force loses, surrenders, and submits. This is how things have worked in your galaxy for millions of years. But humanity does not fight wars in the way you understand them. Zelvox's expression shifted from amusement to irritation. Then how do humans fight? Daniel met the High Arbiter's gaze directly. We do not conquer. We do not occupy. We do not accept surrender. He let those words hang in the air for a long moment. We erase. More laughter filled the chamber, but this time it sounded slightly less certain. Something in the human ambassador's voice suggested that he was not making an empty boast. A small delegate from a species called the Mentari raised one of its 6 arms. Erase? What does this mean? You destroy planets? Many species have such capabilities. It is nothing special. No, Daniel said softly. We do not destroy. Destruction leaves remains. Destruction leaves memories. Destruction leaves the possibility of revenge and recovery. He shook his head slowly. When humanity decides that something is a threat to our existence, we remove that threat completely. Not just the armies. Not just the weapons. The threat itself ceases to exist. It is as if it never was. The laughter had stopped now. The chamber had grown very quiet. High Arbiter Zelvox rose from his seat, his tall form casting a long shadow across the floor. You speak in riddles, human. You try to frighten us with words because you have nothing else. The council has heard enough of this nonsense. He gestured to the assembled delegates. I hereby declare that humanity has 30 standard cycles to reconsider their position. If they do not accept integration by that time, the Carthony Third Fleet will travel to their home system and demonstrate what happens to species that defy the Council's will. Daniel nodded respectfully, as if Zelvox had just announced the weather. 30 cycles. We understand. He turned to Lisa. Commander, please inform Captain Nathan Drake aboard the Resolute that we will be returning to Earth shortly. Lisa spoke quietly into her communication device, while Daniel faced the Council one final time. High Arbiter, members of the Council, I hope that the next 30 cycles will bring wisdom to your deliberations. Humanity truly does wish for peace. We have seen enough war in our history to know its costs. But if you force us to act, please understand that there will be no second chances. There will be no negotiations after the fact. There will be no surrender accepted. He straightened his jacket and offered a small bow. We will use these 30 cycles wisely. I suggest you do the same. With that, Daniel Cooper and Lisa Warren turned and walked out of the Great Hall. The assembled delegates watched them go, most still chuckling at the arrogance of these tiny, fragile creatures. Only the Selenari representative remained silent, her crystalline form flickering with colors that her species associated with deep unease. She had lived for over 2,000 years and had seen many species rise and fall. Something about these humans troubled her in a way she could not quite explain, but she said nothing. After all, what could 2 soft-bodied primates possibly do against the combined might of the Galactic Council? In exactly 28 cycles, the galaxy would learn the answer to that question, and nothing would ever be the same again. The council chamber had descended into chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, their voices mixing into a storm of fear and confusion. Some demanded immediate military action against humanity. Others called for complete evacuation of all worlds near human space. A few simply sat in shocked silence, unable to process what they had witnessed. High Arbiter Zelvox stood at the central podium, trying to restore order, but his commands fell on deaf ears. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Carthony Dominion had lost control of the council chamber. The Vrexian delegate, whose species had once been feared predators throughout the galaxy, was clicking his mandibles in a rapid pattern that indicated extreme distress. "This cannot be real," he kept repeating. "No technology can simply erase matter. There must be debris, radiation, something. This is a trick, an illusion designed to frighten us." "It is no trick," said a calm voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Daniel Cooper walking toward the central platform. Commander Lisa Warren followed close behind him, her expression as composed as ever. They had returned to Volantis Prime within hours of the fleet's destruction, as if they had been waiting nearby the entire time. The chamber fell silent as Daniel reached the podium. He looked around at the assembled delegates, noting the fear in their eyes, the trembling in their limbs, the way they leaned away from him as if he carried a deadly disease. "Distinguished delegates," Daniel began, "I understand that you have many questions. I will answer what I can." The Selenari representative, her crystalline body flickering with agitated colors, spoke first. "Ambassador Cooper, what you have shown us violates every known law of physics. Energy cannot simply disappear. Matter cannot simply cease to exist. Please explain what we witnessed." Daniel nodded respectfully. "I can explain the effect, though not the mechanism. Humanity developed what we call quantum dissolution technology approximately 2 centuries ago. It operates on principles that our scientists still do not fully understand. What we do know is this: when activated, the technology identifies a target and removes it from existence at the most fundamental level of reality. Removes it how? The Selenari pressed. The target does not explode or disintegrate. It does not transform into energy or scatter into atoms. It simply ceases to be. One moment it exists. The next moment it does not. There is no transition state, no intermediate phase. Existence, then non-existence. A murmur of horror rippled through the chamber. High Arbiter Zelvox finally found his voice. "You speak of removing ships and soldiers. But what about the Carthony people themselves? What about our homeworld, our colonies, our civilians?" Daniel exchanged a glance with Lisa before responding. "High Arbiter, I must inform you that the demonstration you witnessed was not the full extent of our response." The chamber went completely still. "While we were speaking with you during our previous visit, humanity's leadership was preparing contingency measures. When the Carthony Third Fleet entered our space despite our warnings, a decision was made to ensure that such a threat could never arise again." Zelvox's 4 eyes widened. "What have you done?" Lisa stepped forward, a datapad in her hand. "Over the past 28 cycles, Protocol Omega was extended to cover all Carthony military infrastructure throughout the galaxy. Your weapons factories no longer exist. Your shipyards are gone. Your military training academies, your weapons research facilities, your strategic command centers, all of them have been erased. You attacked our homeworld?" Zelvox's voice cracked with a mixture of rage and terror. "No," Daniel replied firmly. "We attacked nothing. We did not bomb your cities or harm your civilians. The Carthony people remain exactly as they were, living in their homes, raising their families, tending their farms and markets. Then what did you do?" Daniel took a slow breath. "We removed everything that made the Carthony a military threat. Your people still exist. Your culture still exists. Your art, your philosophy, your families and communities, all of these remain. But you are no longer warriors. You no longer have the knowledge, the infrastructure, or the capability to wage war." The chamber erupted again, but this time the noise was different. It was not anger or defiance. It was pure animal terror. The Vrexian delegate was the first to articulate what everyone was thinking. "If you can do this to the Carthony, you can do it to any of us. You could erase our militaries, our governments, our entire civilizations whenever you choose. Yes, Daniel said simply. We could. Silence fell like a heavy blanket over the assembly. But we have not, Daniel continued. And we will not, unless we are given no other choice. What happened to the Carthani was not punishment or conquest. It was a measured response to a direct threat against our existence. They brought a war fleet to our home system. They made clear their intention to destroy our worlds and enslave our people. We responded accordingly. The Selenari representative spoke again, her voice trembling despite her attempt to remain calm. Ambassador, you said this technology has existed for 200 years. You said it has been used 3 times before. Who were the previous targets? Daniel's expression grew somber. The first use was against a faction within humanity itself. During what we call the Final War, a group sought to use nuclear and biological weapons to establish dominance over the entire human species. They were erased before they could act. He paused, gathering himself before continuing. The second use was against an artificial intelligence that had been designed for warfare. It evolved beyond its programming and determined that organic life was inefficient. It began building forces to eliminate all biological creatures on Earth. It was erased along with everything it had created. And the third? The Selenari asked. The third use was against a species from outside our solar system. They arrived at Earth approximately 150 years ago, before humanity had developed faster than light travel. Their intentions were not peaceful. They made no attempt at communication, only conquest. They were erased before they could fire a single weapon. The chamber processed this information in stunned silence. We have never spoken of these events to other species, Daniel explained. We have never revealed our capability to the wider galaxy. For over a century, we have watched your council rise and expand. We have seen you conquer worlds and integrate species into your empire. We have observed your methods, your politics, your wars. He spread his hands in a gesture of openness. We chose not to interfere because, despite its violence, the galaxy maintained a kind of balance. The strong dominated the weak, but they did not eliminate them. Conquered peoples could rise again. There was always hope for change, for growth, for improvement. And now? Zelvox asked weakly. And now your council threatened to end that balance. You came to our home with the intention of making humanity slaves forever. You made it clear that you would accept nothing less than our complete submission. Daniel's voice hardened slightly. We could not allow that. Not because we fear slavery, but because we cannot trust what a species capable of quantum dissolution technology might do after generations of oppression. He looked directly at Zelvox. We removed Carthani military capability not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. You posed a threat. You refused to withdraw that threat. Now the threat no longer exists. The High Arbiter, once the most powerful figure in the galaxy, seemed to shrink before the Assembly's eyes. What happens now? He asked in a voice barely above a whisper. Daniel allowed his expression to soften. That depends entirely on you, High Arbiter. And on all of you. He gestured to the assembled delegates. Humanity has shown you what we can do. Now we will show you what we actually want. He took a step back from the podium and clasped his hands behind his back. We want peace. We want cooperation. We want to explore this vast universe alongside other intelligent species, to share knowledge and culture, to learn from each other and grow together. We have no desire to rule the galaxy or to remake it in our image. His voice grew quiet but intense. We have seen what happens when a species becomes obsessed with power and control. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning that lesson. We have no wish to repeat those mistakes on a galactic scale. Lisa Warren stepped forward again. The Council can continue to exist. Trade can continue. Diplomatic relations can continue. But the old ways, the conquest and subjugation, the forced integration of unwilling species, these must end. If they do not, humanity will end them ourselves. The delegates looked at each other, a new understanding passing between them. The galaxy had not simply witnessed a display of power. It had witnessed the end of an era and the beginning of something entirely new. And for the first time in living memory, the future was completely uncertain. In the weeks that followed the destruction of the Cartheni military, the galaxy transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Some species withdrew from Council space entirely, terrified that any interaction with humanity might draw their attention. Others sent desperate diplomatic missions to Earth, offering everything from tribute to unconditional surrender. A few openly discussed forming alliances against the humans, though these conversations always ended when someone pointed out the obvious futility of such plans. But Ambassador Daniel Cooper had other priorities. He had accepted an invitation from the Selenari ambassador Kieth to meet privately in the crystal gardens of Volantis Prime. The gardens were famous throughout the galaxy, a place where delicate structures of living crystal grew in patterns that had taken thousands of years to develop. It was a place for quiet reflection, far from the chaos of the council chamber. Daniel walked slowly through the garden, admiring the way the light refracted through the crystal formations. Keth moved beside him, her own crystalline body harmonizing with the structures around her. "You must understand," Keth said after a long silence, "that many species are now more afraid of humanity than they have ever been of anything in their entire history." "I understand," Daniel replied. "Fear was not our intention, but it was the necessary consequence of our actions." "Was it, though? Was any of this necessary?" Kieth's form flickered with colors that indicated deep distress. "You could have simply hidden. You could have defended your borders without revealing what you can do. Why show us?" Daniel stopped walking and turned to face the Selenari ambassador. Because hiding was no longer an option. The Council's expansion policies have changed over the past century. In the early days, conquered species were allowed to maintain their identity. They paid tribute, they followed certain rules, but they remained themselves. And now? Now the Council practices cultural erasure. We have watched you take species and strip them of everything that made them unique. Language, religion, art, history, all replaced with a standardized council identity. The bodies survive, but the souls are destroyed. Daniel shook his head slowly. That is not conquest. That is a different kind of elimination, just spread out over generations instead of moments. Kieth was silent for a long moment. "You are saying that what we do is as bad as what you can do?" "I am saying that you do slowly what we can do quickly. At least our method is honest. At least our method is instant. At least our method acknowledges what it truly is." Daniel resumed walking, his hands clasped behind his back. "When humanity erases something, we know exactly what we are doing. We feel the weight of it. We mourn for what we have destroyed, even when the destruction was necessary. And when we integrate a species into the Council, when we teach them our ways and replace their own, you call it enlightenment. You call it civilization. You tell yourselves that you are helping them, improving them, saving them from their own primitive ways." Daniel's voice grew harder. "But the result is the same. A unique perspective on the universe, developed over millions of years of evolution and culture, simply gone. Replaced by a copy of yourselves." They walked in silence for several minutes, the only sound the soft chiming of the crystal structures as they responded to their movement. "Why tell me this?" Kieth finally asked. "I am only one voice among many in the Council." Daniel turned to face her directly. "Because you are 2,000 years old, Ambassador. You have seen empires rise and fall. You have watched species destroy themselves and others. You have perspective that most of your colleagues lack. He gestured at the crystal gardens around them. Your species builds these structures over thousands of years, one tiny addition at a time. You understand patience. You understand that the most important changes happen slowly, through countless small decisions rather than dramatic actions. Kieth's form brightened slightly, a sign of interest among her people. You want me to help change the council from within. I want you to understand why humanity revealed itself now, in this way. Daniel sat down on a bench formed from a single piece of blue crystal. We did not do this to conquer the galaxy. We have no interest in ruling over other species. We revealed ourselves because we were running out of time. Running out of time for what? The Council's expansion was approaching human space. Within a few decades, you would have reached our borders through natural growth rather than deliberate attack. When that happened, conflict would have been inevitable. The Carthani simply accelerated the timeline by demanding our submission. Daniel looked up at the alien sky, its 3 suns casting complex shadows through the crystal structures. We chose to reveal ourselves on our own terms in a way that would maximize the impact. We wanted the galaxy to understand, completely and permanently, that threatening humanity is not just dangerous. It is pointless. And now that the threat has been demonstrated, Daniel smiled slightly. Now we can move on to what we actually want, which is neighbors, friends, partners. He spread his hands wide. Humanity has achieved almost everything we could achieve alone. We have mastered our own biology, conquered disease and aging, built habitats that can sustain us anywhere in the universe. We have developed technologies that can create or destroy on scales most species cannot imagine. His smile faded. But we have also discovered something troubling. Without challenge, without growth, without new perspectives and new problems to solve, we begin to stagnate. Our art becomes repetitive. Our philosophy becomes circular. Our science becomes incremental rather than revolutionary. Kieth moved closer, her curiosity evident in the shifting colors of her form. You need us. We need everyone, Daniel confirmed. Every species in this galaxy has developed unique ways of seeing the universe. Unique art, unique music, unique approaches to problems we have never considered. Some of you have developed technologies we never imagined. Others have created philosophies that challenge our deepest assumptions about reality. He stood up and faced Kieth directly. When the Council integrated species, it destroyed all of that. Billions of years of unique development wiped out in the name of efficiency and unity. The galaxy became poorer with each conquest, even as the Council grew richer in territory. And humanity would preserve these differences? Humanity would celebrate them. Daniel's voice grew passionate. Can you imagine a galaxy where every species maintains its identity while freely sharing knowledge and culture? Where a Selenari crystal garden inspires human architects, who in turn create something that inspires Rexian engineers, who build something that amazes us all. Kieth's form flickered rapidly, processing the vision Daniel was describing. You speak of cooperation without domination, of diversity without conflict. This has never been achieved in galactic history. Then perhaps it is time to try something new. Daniel extended his hand, a human gesture of friendship that Kieth had learned during her long diplomatic career. We have shown you the stick, Ambassador. Now let us show you what we can offer as partners rather than enemies. Kieth extended a crystalline appendage and touched Daniel's hand. The contact created a soft chiming sound, like distant bells. I will speak to the Council, she said. I make no promises about how they will respond. I expect nothing more. Daniel smiled again. But I believe that once the fear fades, curiosity will take its place. Your species did not become great by avoiding the unknown. Neither did mine. They began walking back toward the Council buildings, the crystal garden chiming softly in their wake. There is one thing I must ask. Kieth said as they walked. The Carthany people. What will become of them? You remove their military, their knowledge of warfare, everything that made them a threat. What did you leave behind? Daniel was quiet for a moment before answering. We left behind a peaceful agricultural society. They still have their families, their communities, their daily lives. They simply no longer remember being warriors. The desire for conquest, the pride in domination, the belief in their own superiority, all of that is gone. Is that not also a kind of cultural erasure? Daniel stopped walking. His expression grew somber. Yes, it is exactly that. And I will carry the weight of that decision for the rest of my life. He looked at Kieth with eyes that held both determination and sorrow. We did to them what they planned to do to us, just faster and more completely. I do not pretend it was right. I only maintain that it was necessary. He resumed walking, his voice heavy. That is the terrible truth of humanity, Ambassador. We are capable of great kindness and great cruelty, sometimes in the same moment. We know that the power we hold is monstrous, and we use it anyway when we believe we must. And you live with that knowledge? Daniel nodded slowly. Every single day. Every human who learns about quantum dissolution technology is taught to see it for what it is. We do not celebrate it. We do not honor those who use it. We mourn them because using this power destroys something in the user as well. He stopped at the edge of the garden, looking back at the crystal structures one last time. But the alternative was extinction. The alternative was watching everything humanity has ever created. Every dream and discovery and work of art. Simply erased by an empire that saw us as nothing more than resources to be exploited. His voice hardened. I chose to save my people. I chose to become a monster so that my children and grandchildren 6 months had passed since the day the Carthany Third Fleet vanished from existence. In that time, the galaxy had changed more dramatically than it had in the previous 1,000 years. The Galactic Council, once an instrument of conquest and domination, had been dissolved by unanimous vote. In its place, a new organization had emerged, the Galactic Assembly, built on principles of voluntary cooperation rather than forced integration. Ambassador Daniel Cooper stood at the podium of the newly constructed Assembly Hall. The architecture was deliberately different from the old council chamber. Instead of a massive space designed to intimidate, this hall was circular and open, with every species given equal seating regardless of their military or economic power. Sunlight streamed through transparent panels in the ceiling, and living plants from dozens of worlds added color and life to the surroundings. The seats were filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Some faces showed hope. Others showed lingering fear. A few showed something that might have been curiosity. Commander Elisa Warren sat in the human delegation section, watching Daniel with quiet pride. Distinguished delegates, Daniel began, his voice calm and measured. I come before you today not to make demands or issue threats. I come to make an offer. He paused, letting the silence settle over the assembly. Humanity has spent the past 6 months preparing a gift for the species of this galaxy. Not the erasure technology. That will never leave human hands, and I pray it will never need to be used again. He touched a control on the podium, and holographic images appeared throughout the hall. Instead, we offer everything else we have. The images showed complex diagrams and schematics, scientific formulas and engineering blueprints, medical procedures and agricultural techniques. The delegates leaned forward in their seats, trying to understand what they were seeing. These are complete plans for technologies humanity has developed over the past 2 centuries, Daniel explained. Medical advances that can extend the lifespan of most species by several hundred years. Agricultural systems that can eliminate famine on any world. Energy generation methods that make resource scarcity meaningless. Transportation networks that can connect distant worlds as easily as neighboring cities. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the assembly. All of this, Daniel continued, we offer freely. No conditions. No tribute required. No submission demanded. Simply take it and use it as you see fit. The Selenari representative, Ambassador Kiath, rose from her seat. Ambassador Cooper, this is extraordinary generosity. But surely there must be some expectation in return. Daniel smiled slightly. There is no expectation, Ambassador. But there is a hope. He stepped out from behind the podium and walked to the center of the circular hall, where he could be seen equally by all delegates. Humanity revealed our most terrible capability because we wanted you to understand that threatening us is pointless. We have demonstrated, conclusively, that we cannot be conquered or coerced. But that demonstration was never our goal. It was simply the price we had to pay to earn your attention. He spread his arms wide, encompassing the entire assembly. Now that we have your attention, let me tell you what humanity actually wants. We want neighbors. We want friends. We want partners in the grand adventure of exploring this vast and mysterious universe. His voice grew passionate, filled with genuine emotion. Look at this hall. Look at the diversity gathered here today. Dozens of species, each one the product of billions of years of unique evolution on unique worlds. Each one capable of seeing the universe in ways no other species can imagine. Each one holding pieces of knowledge and wisdom that could transform existence for all of us. He pointed to the Racian delegation. Your species developed a form of mathematics that our scientists are still struggling to understand. The applications could revolutionize our engineering. He pointed to the Selenari. Your crystal growing techniques could create materials stronger and lighter than anything humanity has ever produced. He pointed to a small delegation from a species called the Mentari. Your music causes emotional responses in species that have no ears. How is that possible? What could we learn from understanding that mystery? Daniel turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly. The old council sought to eliminate these differences. They wanted a galaxy where every species thought the same way, valued the same things, solved problems in the same manner. They called it unity, but it was really just poverty. A universe with only one way of thinking is a universe that has lost most of its potential. He returned to the podium. Humanity offers our technology not because we want something in return, but because we want to see what you will do with it. We want to be amazed. We want to be challenged. We want to discover that our assumptions about reality were wrong all along, that there are possibilities we never imagined. Former High Arbiter Zelvox, now simply a representative of the Carthany agricultural worlds, raised his hand hesitantly. Daniel nodded in his direction. Ambassador Cooper, Zelvox said, his voice much smaller than it had been 6 months ago. My people were your enemies. We came to your home with the intention of destroying you. Why would you offer us these gifts? Why would you help us become strong again? The hall fell silent. It was the question everyone had been wanting to ask. Daniel considered his response carefully before speaking. The Carthany who threatened us no longer exist. Not the individuals, but the identity that drove them to conquest. The people who remain are farmers, artists, teachers, and parents. They are not your enemies, and they never were. They were simply following a path that their ancestors set them on, never questioning whether it was the right path. He walked towards Zelvox, stopping at a respectful distance. Humanity has been on similar paths. We have had our own periods of conquest and cruelty, times when we believed that might made right, and that the strong deserved to rule the weak. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning that these beliefs were wrong. Daniel placed his hand over his heart. We did not remove your military capability out of hatred or revenge. We did it because we recognized ourselves in you. We saw what we might have become if circumstances had been different. And we decided that the galaxy deserved better than either of us had been offering. He turned back to address the full assembly. The technologies we offer today are meant to create abundance. When every species has enough, when survival is guaranteed and comfort is universal, the incentives for war begin to fade. There will still be conflicts, disagreements, and competition. That is the nature of intelligent life. But perhaps, with enough abundance, those conflicts can be resolved without violence. Lisa Warren rose from her seat and joined Daniel at the podium. Together, they faced the assembled representatives. Humanity makes one promise today, Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. We will never use our capability to conquer or dominate. We will never force our ways on other species. We will never attempt to rule the galaxy or remake it in our image. Daniel continued, but we also make one warning. If any species attempts to eliminate another, if any power rises that threatens to destroy the diversity and potential of this galaxy, humanity will respond. Not with conquest, but with removal. We will not allow the mistakes of the past to repeat themselves. He let those words settle over the assembly before his expression softened. That is the burden we have chosen to carry. We will be the guardians of diversity, the protectors of difference, the defenders of possibility. It is a heavy weight, and we do not bear it with pride. But someone must ensure that the galaxy remains a place where many flowers can bloom, not just one. Ambassador Kieth rose again. Her crystalline form was glowing with colors that her species associated with deep emotion. Ambassador Cooper, what you propose is without precedent. A species with the power to rule everything, choosing instead to protect everything. Many will doubt your sincerity. Many will believe this is simply a more sophisticated form of control. Daniel nodded. They may be right to doubt. Words are easy. Trust takes time. Humanity will need to prove our intentions through actions over years and decades and centuries. He smiled. But we have time. And we have patience. And we have hope. He raised his hand in a gesture of invitation. Join us, not as subjects or servants, but as partners and friends. Let us build something new together, something that has never existed before. A galaxy where every species can thrive, where every perspective is valued, where the future is written not by the strongest, but by all of us together. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, Ambassador Kieth began to move toward the central floor. The Vrexian delegate followed. Then the Mentari. Then representatives from a dozen other species, all moving toward Daniel and Lisa. All reaching out to touch hands or appendages or energy fields and gestures of connection. Zelvox hesitated for a long moment, then stood and walked toward the growing circle. When he reached Daniel, he bowed his head. My people caused great harm, he said quietly. We can never undo what was done, but perhaps we can help build something better. Daniel placed a hand on Zelvox's shoulder. That is all any of us can do. Learn from the past. Live in the present. Build toward a better future. The circle continued to grow as more and more